$2.4 billion vanished into the digital ether, leaving over 3 million people holding nothing but worthless numbers on a screen. In 2016, a woman stood before a roaring crowd at London's Wembley Arena wearing a flowing ball gown and diamond chandelier earrings, promising financial revolution. She declared her creation the Bitcoin killer, a digital asset that would bank the unbanked and shatter the traditional financial establishment. It was a masterclass in theatrical persuasion, masking an abyss of pure financial deception. Dr. Ruja Ignatova was not a typical back-alley grifter. Armed with a law degree from Oxford and a stint at the elite consulting firm McKinsey, she possessed a resume practically engineered to disarm skepticism. This glittering pedigree provided an impenetrable shield of legitimacy, allowing her to weaponize her intellect against a vulnerable global public. She understood that in the opaque world of high finance, a confident facade backed by prestigious credentials could easily override fundamental logic. The vehicle for this unprecedented wealth extraction was OneCoin, launched in late 2014. By examining the structural foundation of the enterprise, forensic accountants later realized it was never designed as a legitimate technological innovation. Instead, it was an old-world Ponzi scheme draped in the confusing, futuristic vocabulary of the digital age. Early participants were paid out using the capital injected by newer recruits, creating an illusion of exponential organic growth that masked the underlying insolvency. The timing was devastatingly precise, capitalizing on the explosive early hysteria surrounding decentralized digital money. The general public was bombarded with headlines of teenage Bitcoin millionaires, breeding an intense fear of missing out on the next great wealth transfer. Ignatova exploited this systemic financial illiteracy, targeting populations who desperately wanted to understand the new digital economy, but lacked the technical expertise to separate a revolutionary algorithm from a slick marketing brochure. Unpacking the specific operational model reveals a highly sophisticated multi-level marketing structure rather than a standard software deployment. OneCoin did not actually sell digital coins to the public. It sold educational packages ranging from €100 to over €100,000. These packages conveniently included promotional tokens, which the buyers were told could be used to mine the actual cryptocurrency on the company's proprietary servers. This structure weaponized human relationships, turning every investor into a motivated, commission-hungry recruiter. Friends pitched to friends and pastors pitched to their congregations, creating highly insulated networks bound by mutual financial dependency. The resulting environment resembled a financial cult, where skepticism was aggressively stamped out by upline recruiters, and any critical analysis was dismissed as the malicious jealousy of outsiders who simply did not understand the vision. At the absolute center of the fraud lay a breathtaking technological void. A legitimate cryptocurrency relies on a blockchain, a decentralized, cryptographically secure public ledger that records all transactions across a network of computers. OneCoin possessed no such architecture. Instead, the company operated a standard SQL database, a rudimentary digital spreadsheet controlled entirely by Ignatova and her inner circle, allowing them to manipulate balances with a few keystrokes. The illusion of technological complexity required constant, exhaustive maintenance by the organization's leadership. To simulate the complex mathematical process of mining, administrators simply programmed the database to steadily increase the number of coins in circulation, regardless of any actual computing power being expended. They were minting a fake cryptocurrency out of thin air, presenting a meticulously choreographed theater of digital creation, while quietly siphoning real fiat currency into offshore accounts. The velocity of capital flowing into the syndicate was staggering, quickly overwhelming the traditional banking infrastructure meant to catch illicit activity. Between 2014 and 2016, roughly €3.4 billion poured into the enterprise from investors spanning over 170 countries. This tidal wave of cash moved through a labyrinthine network of shell companies, obscure payment processors, and cooperative financial institutions scattered across jurisdictions with notoriously lax oversight. The sheer volume of these transfers exposed critical failures in global anti-money laundering protocols. Banks repeatedly failed to conduct adequate due diligence, the comprehensive appraisal of a business undertaken by a prospective partner to establish its assets and liabilities. Because the funds were disguised as revenue from educational software sales, compliance departments routinely rubber-stamped transactions that should have triggered immediate regulatory alarms and frozen the accounts. As the Treasury swelled, the self-proclaimed Cryptoqueen adopted an increasingly extravagant lifestyle, which served a dual purpose as both personal reward and corporate propaganda. She purchased multi-million-dollar estates in London and Sofia, hosted exclusive yacht parties on the Black Sea, and draped herself in haute couture. This conspicuous consumption was broadcast directly to the investor base, offering tangible, visual proof that the wealth generation system was functioning exactly as promised. However, the aggressive expansion eventually attracted the scrutiny of international financial watchdogs. Regulators in Bulgaria, Italy, and Germany began issuing public warnings, noting the distinct lack of transparency and the hallmark characteristics of an illegal pyramid structure. Despite these mounting red flags, the organization simply closed compromised bank accounts and opened new ones in more permissive jurisdictions, staying one step ahead of the fragmented global regulatory apparatus. To placate a growing faction of anxious users wanting to cash out their astronomical paper profits, the syndicate launched an internal exchange called OneCoin's. It was a brilliantly designed pressure valve, offering the illusion of liquidity while strictly limiting daily withdrawal amounts. Whenever withdrawal requests threatened to drain the actual fiat reserves, the exchange would conveniently shut down for supposed system maintenance, trapping the funds indefinitely. Behind the locked digital doors of the exchange, a profound human tragedy was quietly unfolding. Families had mortgaged their primary residences, liquidated their retirement portfolios, and borrowed heavily against their futures, entirely convinced they were securing generational wealth. The realization that their digital wallets contained nothing but manipulated database entries triggered a wave of bankruptcies, shattered marriages, and devastating psychological trauma across working-class communities globally. Behind closed doors, the architects of the deception were suffocating under the weight of their own success. Internal communications later obtained by law enforcement revealed a frantic leadership team fully aware that the mathematical impossibility of their payout structure was accelerating toward collapse. Ignatova and her brother Konstantin exchanged panicked messages about how to stage a graceful exit, floating ideas of blaming external hackers or hostile governments for the impending system failure. The inevitable breaking point arrived in the autumn of 2017, as a sealed U.S. federal indictment loomed and international arrest warrants were being prepared. On October 25th, Ruja Ignatova boarded a Ryanair flight from Sofia to Athens, slipping through the fingers of multiple intelligence agencies. She walked out of the Athens airport and vanished completely, leaving her brother, her executives, and millions of devout followers to face the catastrophic fallout. The leadership vacuum triggered a rapid, chaotic unraveling of the entire global operation. Konstantin Ignatov assumed control, attempting to maintain the facade with increasingly desperate promotional events, but the illusion of technological supremacy had permanently fractured. Within 18 months, the FBI apprehended him at Los Angeles International Airport, effectively severing the head of the remaining organizational structure and initiating a cascade of executive arrests. The subsequent legal proceedings offered a forensic dissection of the enterprise's inner workings. Konstantin agreed to a plea deal, testifying against former accomplices and confirming under oath that the organization never possessed a functional decentralized ledger. Federal prosecutors systematically unsealed charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, dismantling the corporate entity while exposing the complicity of high-powered attorneys who had helped wash the stolen billions. Despite the successful prosecutions, the effort to repatriate the stolen funds proved to be an exercise in futility for international authorities. The billions of euros had already been atomized, scattered across sovereign wealth funds, luxury Dubai real estate, and impenetrable offshore trusts. This asset dispersal highlighted a glaring weakness in the global financial system. The speed of digital financial crime drastically outpaces the slow, bureaucratic process of international asset recovery. The collapse reverberated far beyond the immediate victims, casting a long, dark shadow over the nascent, legitimate digital asset industry. The sheer scale of the OneCoin disaster became the ultimate cautionary tale for lawmakers, hardening regulatory stances and fueling aggressive crackdowns on digital tokens worldwide. It provided irrefutable evidence that without strict oversight, the complex architecture of modern finance could be easily hijacked by bad actors. Yet, the psychological grip of the deception proved incredibly resilient, defying all legal and technical evidence presented in federal courts. Even after the arrests, the guilty pleas, and the public confirmation that the ledger was entirely fake, fragmented groups of investors continued to hold secretive meetings. They clung to the desperate hope that the Cryptoqueen was in hiding, working on a master plan to launch the coin and make them all rich. The architect of this enduring financial tragedy remains one of the most sought-after fugitives on the planet. Placed on the FBI 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list alongside cartel bosses and serial killers, Ignatova's ability to evade capture for years speaks to the vast resources at her disposal. Whether she is hiding behind extensive plastic surgery, protected by organized crime syndicates, or deceased, her ghost continues to haunt the international financial community. The legacy of this multi-billion-dollar mirage is a masterclass in the mechanics of modern exploitation. It proved that the most dangerous financial weapons are not always complex algorithms or high-frequency trading bots, but rather the timeless vulnerabilities of human nature. By wrapping an ancient con in the impenetrable jargon of tomorrow, the architects of this fraud demonstrated that as long as the promise of effortless wealth exists, the capacity for monumental deception will inevitably follow.